Here are your video notes for lesson 4.2, which is using linear equations in slope-intercept form. Tools that you will be using, and I'm calling them tools, but they're just kind of things you've learned in the past. You will be using slope-intercept form, so you need to know y equals mx plus b. You'll also be using how to get the slope from a graph, which you would have to use slope equals rise over run. And you also would be using the equation for calculating slope if you know two coordinate points. So you'd be using m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And we should be becoming quite familiar with using these now. I'm going to jump ahead. You don't have to write stuff down here, but just to take a look at what your book looks like. And in your book, this is on page 232. Title of it's right there. But the book does a nice job here of explaining to you. It's kind of a three-step process that we're going to be doing. First thing you do is identify the slope. The second thing you will be doing is finding the y-intercept, and that's what's going to be like a new process for you. And after you know the y-intercept and the slope, then you're doing the same thing you're doing in lesson 4.1 material. When you identify the slope, it's either going to be given to you, or you can use the slope formula. Or if you actually have a graph, you can know that slope equals rise over run. And you can just count it out from the graph most of the time. Here's what's new for you. We're going to have to substitute the slope into the equation and the coordinate points x and y in order to find the y-intercept here now. So kind of to let you see what this looks like, guided practice example out of the book. If we'll just copy this down in our notes as example 1. It says write the equation of a line that passes through the given point 6, 3. So you need it to pass through 6, 3, and you need to end up having it have a slope of 2. So if we go to working with slope-intercept form, it's y equals mx plus b. What you should already know how to do is that we're going to take the slope of 2, and we're going to put that in for x right there. Oops, not for x. We're going to put it in for m right there, and that's going to give us y equals 2x plus b. Now, in order to find out what b is, we need to come up with an equation, and this is where we're now going to use slope-intercept form to find it. The 6 right here is the x value, so we can substitute that in there, and the 3 right here is the y value, so that can get substituted in there. Then we will end up having an equation that looks like this, and we'll have 3 equaling 2 times 6 plus b. Solving this, if we multiply the 2 and the 6 together, we'll get 12 plus b. And the key thing was now we just have one variable left here. We can solve this equation to find out what b is. B equals 3 minus 12 will give us a negative 9. Now the only thing we need to write the equation is we need the slope and the y-intercept, and we have both of those. So we could write the equation now as y equals something times x, and put the y-intercept in there. The slope here is 2, and the y-intercept that we found down here is negative 9. That's our answer. If we move ahead to other types of problems, kind of how they would get set up to do, example 2 up there gives you 2 points. So for example 2, or guided practice 2 that they gave you, here's the 2 points. Would you write these down in your notes? If we're going to write an equation of a line that goes through the 1, negative 2, and negative 5, 4. The first thing we need to do is to find the slope, and in order to find the slope we should be doing y2 minus y1, so we're going to get 4 minus a negative 2 over, now we have to do x2 minus x1, and we'll get negative 5 minus 1. When we subtract these, if we change them to the opposites, adding the opposite, we get 6 over negative 6, which is negative 1 for our slope. Now if we start working with y equals mx plus b and use this to find our y-intercept that we don't know, we just need to substitute stuff in for all of the other variables we see here, the y, the m, and the x. We now know our slope is negative 1. I can put that in. The value of x. It will not matter which one of these 2 points you use. You can use this point, or you could use this point. I usually would look at it and say I'm going to use the easiest to use numbers. I'm going to go with the one that I underlined in red and substitute in the x value there as 1, and the y value is negative 2. And from there we could proceed to solve the equation for b to find out what the y-intercept is. Negative 1 times 1 is negative 1 plus b, now equals negative 2. If we add the 1 and we add the 1, we will get that b equals negative 1. And now we have enough information to write our equation for this. Our final answer would be y equals, the slope is negative 1, and the y-intercept is negative 1. And most of the time when you write that equation, you probably would leave out multiplying it by 1 there. You get negative x minus 1 is your equation. Then here's your answer for this. Alright, if I leave you to do one on your own, the setup of it is for the equation linear function f of negative 2 equals 10 and f of 4 equals 2. To write an equation for that, make sure you know f of negative 2 is really just the ordered pair negative 2, 10, and f of 4 equaling negative 2 is the ordered pair 4, negative 2. So go ahead, pause the video, work through this, and come back, unpause it to see if you have it right. Welcome back from unpausing your video, and if we take our y values and subtract them, we should have negative 2 minus 10 over our x values subtracted would be 4 minus a negative 2. This turns into a negative 12. If we turned into adding the opposite, if we add the opposite here, we get 6, so our slope ends up being a negative 2. For working with y equals mx plus b now, we substitute in our slope of negative 2. We substitute in either of our coordinate points. I see 10 as a big number, so I'm going to use the 4 and the negative 2. The x value there is 4, so I'm going to put the 4 in here, plus b is going to equal our y value out there is negative 2. Negative 2 times 4 gives me negative 8 plus b is equal to negative 2. And then I will add the 8 onto both sides, and we would find out that b equals 6. So now if I go to write my equation, I have y equals something times x plus something else. My slope we found up here is negative 2, and my y-intercept we found right here is 6. So you get the equation y equals negative 2x plus 6. And that concludes your video notes for today.